So, Brandon, do I need this or no?
For them, possibly. You could do both.
I can do both. Well, it's like doing karaoke up here or something. Okay, great. Y'all, it's such a pleasure to be with you, and even more so to be introduced by Jacqueline Mars, by Forrest. Jacqueline and the Mars family and the Mars Corporation actually funded a program at the National Institute of Health that was my initial funding to work with dogs with CCI, or I should say Canine Companions. It would have been 2009 through the National Institute of Health. It was $100,000. And that grant then led to about $10 million of grants later that has allowed us to make the discoveries that we've made. So a pleasure, honor to have her introduce me and our work, and a pleasure to be here with y'all. I take it you guys like horses or something? Is that right? I don't know. I'm getting vibes. I don't know, subtle vibes. But I imagine some of you like dogs too. Yes. Okay. So I do too. I'm a big canine fan. So what I want to do tonight is tell you sort of my origin story about how I ended up working with Canine Companions for Independence, or I should say, so they've just rebranded. It's Canine Companions. I apologize if I say 3 words instead of 2. But I'll tell my origin story of how I got connected with Canine Companions, and then I want to tell you a little bit about the puppy kindergarten. But I also want to brag on this organization, because I have, before I start, which is I have tons of people, tons of Duke students, some of the greatest minds in the United States, coming to our campus. It is harder and harder to get in every year. I certainly wouldn't even bother applying. It's amazing I get to teach these guys. And I work with lots of nonprofits, Duke being one of them. And I will tell you that this is the best run, the most focused on their mission, and the absolute most joy to work with. And it's not just because of the dogs, it's because of the people. The people at Canine Companions are amazing. And I've been to each of their campuses, I have worked at each of them, and I have met the people they help, that they serve. I've met the dogs, and I've met all the staff, the trainers, the volunteers. It is such a heartwarming story what they do. And I do agree with Alex's characterization, Debbie's characterization. I think they are the Duke University of the service dog world. I think that they are absolutely the tip top of the iceberg. Other people can be Harvard and Yale. So with that, great thanks to Canine Companions, because not only have they helped me test a whole bunch of scientific ideas, but even just personally, it's been a big part of my family life. I have a retired service dog named Congo at our house, who is my kid's best friend. And he also helps us raise lots of Canine Companion dogs at Duke, and helps a lot of Duke students get cheered up when they're not always the happiest or whatever. And then we've raised a bunch of puppies, as some of y'all have, and you know what that can entail. I mean, it is absolutely the most fun and exhausting thing you can imagine, short of raising a child, or maybe a horse. I don't know. I've never raised a pony, but I imagine that could be hard too. Okay, so I have to, one caveat, apology, which is that I have a new computer, an Apple, and it is designed for HDMI. And we are using VGA for the projector. And so because of this language translation issue, my slides are, shall we say, narrower. I don't want you to think that I am narrow-minded like my slides, and I'm really looking forward to all your ideas and questions, but bear with me. Johnny's going to help me through, and we'll just do the best, and then I will try to tell you a good story as we go along, so who even cares about the slides anyway? Okay, so if you could go, Johnny, next slide. All right, so this was to remind me to thank certain people. Brenda Kennedy, who is the head of the veterinary program, James Dern, who runs the puppy program, Ashton Roberts, who helps me with everything. We actually, with the puppy kindergarten we have at Duke, I'll tell you more about, we work most closely with the Southeast, not the Northeast region coordinator and program. Our puppies end up in Orlando. They go hang out with Mickey Mouse after they're done with us. And Ashton is the head puppy coordinator there. So thankful to her. And then Paige Mazzoni, who's the CEO, president of Canine Companions. All amazing, remarkable, as the people in the room as well. And then I have all the research students and staff. They always are really frustrated because nobody feels sorry for them because they work with puppies for a living. And they always are really sad about, that it's exhausting and hard, and we do science that's actually really challenging. And then people are like, but you work with puppies, no one cares. Whatever your whining is, you're working with Labrador, Golden Retriever cross puppies, wham wham. But I know their pain, and I feel them, and so thank you. So everything I'm going to share with you is because a lot of people worked really hard. Duke students who have also gone on to other universities. I'm going to talk about some work that has been done in collaboration with one of my former students who's now a professor at University of Arizona, for instance. Okay, so next slide, Johnny. All right, so what I want to do, and Johnny, this is going to require a mouse move. So we're going to test our ability to work together here. If you can click the video, this is one of the games we play with the dogs to test their ability. And what you're going to see is two different approaches to solve a ridiculously simple problem, which is they've been introduced to a box that food has been put in, and then it's locked. How are we doing, Johnny? It's not working? Yeah, there you go. You're good. It's running. Okay. So they've been introduced a dog like Tolliver or any of the other Canine Companion dogs being trained. They're introduced to a box that has food. They learn they can get food out of the box. But then, as evil scientists, we lock the box on the next trial. We put food in it again and we lock it. And this is the response we get from some Canine Companion dogs. I'm going to get this dog. I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to break it open. I don't care. I'm never going to stop. I'm the man. I'm the dog. There's food in here. It's my food, all right? And then there's a totally different response that some dogs give us. You have a thumb. Help. You put that in there. It's locked. You, human. I'm a dog. You're a human. You have a thumb. Yes, I'm looking at you. I'm melting your heart. I'm melting it. Open it for me. You. Yes. You're a human. Do that. I saw you put it in there. Anyway, a much more communicative approach. So it's silly. It's funny, this video, right? I have to go to conferences with neuroscientists and geneticists who have theories and methods that are totally intimidating, and then I have to show this and be like, did you guys get it? Did you understand what we did? It's not like, fMRI or like, doing genomics or something. So it's in some ways it's laughable, but we're funded by the Department of Defense, and we're funded by the National Institutes of Health. And the reason is because this little game is very diagnostic in a dog that is going to find bombs versus a dog that's going to help a person. And you can already guess what response might be predictive of doing what kind of job. So the first dog, very persistent, very self-confident, and thinks they can solve whatever problem they can on their own. That's a dog you want out detecting bombs or doing detection work. The second dog, the dog that immediately is like, let's talk about this, is a dog that you want helping somebody because they're very communicative. They have, not only are they obviously very bonded, but they're going to work together with somebody really, really well. So here's the remarkable thing, though. The first dog that looks like a detector dog or had a detector dog response, that's a Canine Companions dog. That is not a detector dog. So we worked with the Marine Corps dogs, and they often look like that, but they sometimes look like a Canine Companions dog. All of the dogs that I worked with, whether they're Marine Corps or Canine Companion dogs, they're all Labrador Retrievers or Golden Mixes. So they are all Labrador Retrievers. I need you, and this is so much easier to explain now that we've had the pandemic, sadly, because you've all had a life course in evolution. Many of us have been taught that evolution takes a really long time. Nothing could be further from the truth. If natural selection is strong, it can happen very fast. The variants that we've been dealing with are evidence of that. So what does that have to do with dogs? It has everything to do with dogs, because the Marine Corps dogs, if I showed you their pictures and I said, or if I took the Canine Companions dogs and I took the Marine Corps dogs and I showed you a slide of their pictures, there's no way you could tell me which one was Canine Companions or which one was a Marine Corps dog. They just look like Labrador Retrievers. You would not be able to do it. We've done it. We've tested. People can't figure it out. But cognitively, psychologically, they are more different from each other than some different species I've studied, because the selection has been so strong for one set or one population of dogs to be search-focused and be very self-confident and be high energy. As trainers in the bomb detection world like to say, they're obsessed about talking about drive, dogs having drive, versus dogs from Canine Companions that are much more people-oriented and much more interested to communicate and interact in a way that Marine Corps dogs don't necessarily do. They're all Labrador Retrievers. So my dramatic answer to your question, actually, you asked, are they American or are they European Labradors? English, sorry. Brilliant question. They are Canine Companion dogs, and they are their own separate breed. The selection pressure has been so strong during the last 4 decades that they have created a new breed of dogs, and they're Canine Companion dogs. That would be my argument, and we have the data to show it. They have more oxytocin than any other breed of dog that we've assessed. They are highly xenophilic, so it ends up that they are very attracted to strangers. It's a hilarious thing. I will tell you, since you're not in my house, I can tell you what happens in my house with our dog Congo, who was a successful service dog, but then he was retired. He loves new people. Anytime he sees a new person, he wants to be with that new person. It's kind of hurtful, but he loves new people. And so, but adorably, when people come into our house and they know we work with animals or whatever, and they tend to be animal-loving people too, and they come in and they meet Congo, of course, he runs up and wants to hang out with a new person. He wants to be with them and interact with them. And they're like, oh, I have a special way with animals. Yeah, all animals love me. I really have a special way. Yeah, and we're like, you sure do. You sure do. That's right. Wow, he really knows the people who love animals. No, he does that to everybody. He literally does it to everybody. He loves new people. So what I'm trying to say is that through natural selection, the process of trying to find dogs that can help people, Canine Companions have really generated a special population of dogs. It is the case. It is absolutely the case. Because, for instance, USDA uses shelter dogs. And they have a very good program to use shelter dogs. They use beagles and shelter dogs. But it's having talked to USDA and consulted with USDA, I'm fantastically enthusiastic about their use of shelter dogs. It's a wonderful thing that they do. But they do have to screen a much larger number of those dogs to find dogs to be successful. So Canine Companions just has a different approach. It's a great approach. And so I got really excited about getting involved in how can we have more dogs placed with more people. So Johnny, can you go to the next slide? All right. So, but I am really focused on thinking about how humans and other animals solve problems, and I'm really a basic researcher. I'm really interested in how human psychology evolved. I've spent as much time or more time with chimpanzees and bonobos, our closest living relatives, as I have with dogs. I study lemurs at Duke's Lemur Center. I've studied monkeys, and I've studied people. I've studied young children from different cultures. I've studied adults too. And I'm really interested in questions about the origin of human psychology. And dogs actually have a big role to play in that research. But in doing that research, and part of the joy of being at Duke, and part of the fun of getting connected to Canine Companions was I realized that our knowledge needs to be acquired in the service of society, that we need to apply what we're learning. And I realized there was a fantastic opportunity, but it wasn't my own realization. It was actually in working with people at Canine Companions, they said, what you're doing is really important for us. Could you help us? And it was actually their idea for me to do what I'm about to share with you. Okay, so in studying cognition, imagine there are these 4 beautiful puppies, and the holy grail would be that when they're young, I could tell you at 8, 10, 12 weeks that the puppy on the right, for instance, is going to be great at detection work, and the puppy on the left is going to be great as a pet. Let's just leave it at that. And maybe the middle two would be great as therapy or assistance dogs. That's the Holy Grail. When they're really young, I can tell you what their prospects are, and I can make a prediction about how they're going to turn out. That's the Holy Grail. Okay? So, Johnny, you can advance it. And so there are all these different jobs that these dogs can grow up to do, and the question is there a way that we could better predict what a dog will grow up to be and be like and be good at? The reason that this is important is because unlike a university like Duke, as selective and as good as we like to say we are, we're actually not that difficult on our students once you're accepted. So our graduation rate, I believe, is like 99%. So basically, if you're accepted at Duke, you're almost certain to graduate. That is not the case if you're a Canine Companions dog. If you go to college at Canine Companions, and they have 6 campuses, you have a 50% chance to make it. So it is honestly the hardest university in America, is Canine Companions. They have the highest, most strict selection criteria because they are trying to make sure when they make those matches that those people are actually going to be served by those dogs. So I got really interested in this problem. My gosh, half the dogs are not making it. And of course, those matches are made when they're 2 years old. So a dog is being invested in for 2 years and then has to, be career changed to something that, is different from what everybody was hoping that dog might be capable of doing. Is there a way that earlier we could either change that outcome, improve that outcome, or is there a way we could identify the dogs with the greatest potential? All right. So next slide, Johnny, sorry. You can keep going. All right. So I get asked, I'm just going to quickly introduce you to cognition. I get asked all the time, I study animal cognition, and I get asked all the time this question by reporters. Apparently this is really important to the public. And the question I get asked all the time is cats versus dogs. Are cats smarter than dogs or whatever? And dolphins smarter than chimpanzees. So I have this slide, which species is smarter? You can imagine in your head which species you think is smarter. But what I would argue is that every one of these species has their unique genius that has been shaped by evolution. And asking me, and what I say to reporters, which drives them crazy, I have a lot of angry reporters who are just looking for a quote. They've already written the article, and there's the quote. They actually already know what they're going to get me to say. And I always drive them crazy because they just want me to say cat or dog. And I'm like, well, no, that's not how it works. You called a scientist, so sorry. Asking me which species is smarter is, if you could click it, Johnny. Sorry, there's a lot of animation, so if you could click it. Asking me which species is smarter is basically like asking which tool in the toolbox is better, a hammer or a screwdriver. I mean, what are we solving? Which problem are we solving? Are we swimming under the ocean and catching a fish? Are we climbing in a tree and jumping between trees and, trying to get fruit? The top right organism is a Clark's nutcracker. They can remember 10,000 locations where they've cached nuts. I can't even remember where my keys are. In fact, I don't know where they are right now. This is a scrub jay, which is a very close relative of the Clark Florida scrub jay. It's a very close relative of the Clark's nutcracker. It can't remember where things are hidden, but it's incredible at keeping up with who's seen where it's hidden things. And it is very good at re-hiding things if any other bird saw where it hid all its food. So it is incredibly socially savvy, while this one, the other bird, is just incredible at remembering things. So who's smarter? I mean, it doesn't make any sense when you start thinking about different species. What's their evolutionary history? What are the problems they have to solve to survive to be successful? So Johnny, if you click the next one. And one more, sorry. Dogs have a story too. And that's where we're going next. As a basic researcher, how I ended up with Canine Companions is I was asked the question, do dogs have their own unique genius? So if you can click this video, I'm sorry, don't click it. It's okay, Johnny, it's okay. I'll just explain it. Sorry, we don't have any sound connected. So it's Anderson Cooper. I'll just do an impersonation of him telling the story. It's a cute video. Well, I guess you can roll it and then I can explain it. I guess that's what we'll do. Let's try that. All right, that's actually my son. And I'm explaining to him this very simple game we do where animals or kids have to make an inference about what you're trying to communicate to them. You have to understand somebody's intention that I'm hiding something in one of two places. You don't know where it is, and I'm just going to tell you where it is. I'm trying to help you. My intention is to communicate in a helpful way so that you can find something. All right? My son, boom, gets it. No problem. Very proud dad. All right. So 9 to 12 months, everyone in this room had a revolution in your understanding of others. You started to read the intentions through gestural communication and the behavior of other people. It ends up that chimpanzees, bonobos, this is bonobos that I work with in Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as smart as they are, they really struggle with this kind of problem. They do not have an ability to understand communicative intention the way that a 9 to 12-month-old infant does. But when you look at this Canine Companions dog, or really any dog, even dingoes, Australian dingoes or New Guinea singing dogs that I've worked with can do this as well. If you communicate like you would to a kid, it's no problem, no big deal. And we control for olfaction. It's not that they just smell the food. It ends up that dogs are incredibly unusual in their understanding of our communicative intent relative to chimpanzees that have brains four times larger than theirs and can outsmart them on 99% of everything. But on this one thing, when it comes to understanding what we're trying to communicate in a helpful way, dogs have a special genius, just like lots of other species have special genius. It's their special genius. Okay, go ahead if you could click the next thing. Keep going, sorry. Keep going, sorry. All right, so one more. So when when you're gonna see circles, you can go ahead and fill it out for me. All right, we tested a whole bunch of dogs and chimpanzees and kids, and we tested them a whole bunch of cognitive abilities. Memory, where things are, how to communicate, etc. And if you click the next one, Johnny, for me. And here's what the dogs look like. These circles kind of represent skill. The bigger the circle, the more skillful you are, okay? And then you can click the next one for me. All right, so what you see is that when it comes to memory, dogs relative to kids that are 2 years old or chimpanzees, bonobos that are adults, they're kind of normal. When it comes to causality, this is understanding that things like solid objects don't pass through each other, or that when things are connected, they act together, causal understanding of the world. You can see that circle's pretty small. Don't ask your dog to do your physics for you, right? It's why they can, the stick through the gate, everybody's seen that, it's why they struggle. They struggle. They have a hard time with that. They can learn it, but they don't get it. But when it comes to communication and cooperative communication, which is actually a core feature of becoming human, it is the critical move that you each did at 9 to 12 months of age that allowed for everything that followed. Dogs look like kids. If you were to ask me as a scientist what animal on the planet looks most like a human when we're somewhere between 9 and 2 years of age and we have this incredibly fast, early emerging social cognition that all culture and language is built on, it would not be a primate. It would be dogs. Okay, next slide. So the story is, and I'm going to have to tell it in story form for you guys, but there's lots of data. The story is that dogs evolved from wolves 15 to 40,000 years ago. 15 to 40,000 years ago, there was no agriculture. There were no domesticated horses. And of course, there were no domesticated animals. And the story is that actually wolves chose us. A population of wolves chose humans. And through natural selection, not through human artificial selection, dogs were selected to be friendly. And we know, because I've done years of research, that when you select for friendliness, you end up being better at understanding cooperative communication. So the cognition came along with selection for friendliness. The idea is that wolves were attracted to humans and human settlements because actually at the time, everybody was living as a forager. There was no agriculture again, so nobody had planted a seed yet. Everybody was living as hunter-gatherers, but we were getting pretty good at being hunter-gatherers. We were super predators at that point, and we were creating a lot of garbage, which we still do. We are even better at that now, I guess. But we were already getting good at that. And if you're a wolf, you have a choice. You wake up in the morning 15 to 40,000 years ago. You're like, I don't know, I'll go hunt some elk and get kicked in the face, and probably 1 out of 20 times I'll be successful. Or I could go to that human settlement place at night, and I can eat their poop and their garbage. It doesn't run away. It doesn't kick. It's got the protein level of chicken. It's true. It's been tested. It's like an energy bar for a wolf. But when you select, I can send you the papers. Anything I'm going to tell you, I can send you the papers. So it's like basically there was selection for a population of wolves that were very attracted to humans, and that selection for attraction is what then started the whole process of domestication. We know that when you select for friendliness, you start seeing more curly tails, floppy ears, you start seeing changes in physiology, endocrinology, all sorts of changes happen. But it all started via natural selection because wolves chose us. Okay, a population of wolves, not all wolves, obviously. Okay, next slide. So I worked really hard to figure out that little story I just told you. And that's when I met folks at Canine Companions. I was happy doing my evolutionary thing and telling stories of where the origin of dogs and how that has to do with human evolution, et cetera. And I met folks at Canine Companions and they were like, have you ever thought about working with us? And I was like, well, not really. I don't think I have anything to contribute or whatever. Well, we have this problem that I've already described to you, and you measure individual differences. Don't you see a lot of individual variability in your games? I'm like, yes, I do. Well, come work with us, and let's see if any of that individual variability in problem solving is related to what we're trying to do in terms of their success at training. And so the long of the long is, the answer is it does. So we've been able to show that there's a relationship between how dogs solve problems and their individual variability in how they solve problems, and its relation to how we might select dogs, whether it's detecting bombs or helping people at Canine Companions or other organizations like that, how we might think about breeding dogs, because we've found out much of what we're looking at is heritable, and we've also made some strides on understanding the genetic mechanisms that are being shaped potentially through selection. And then we have the puppy kindergarten where we're working on rearing. So if you can go to the next slide, there's a lot of animation here. We're just going to skip through all that. You can keep going, thanks. Skip through that. You can skip through that. Oh, well, let me tell you about this really quick. This is a fun one. Okay, so this was, thank you, Johnny. This is when we compared bomb-detecting dogs, and we compared canine companion dogs, and we compared them to family dogs. So people come to Duke, they bring their family pet dogs to Duke, and the circles, again, just sort of show skill level, and the top up there, memory, self-control, communication, are different measures of different types of cognition. And what you're going to see clearly is that not all dogs are the same, not all dog populations are the same, and this was how we were able to figure out that there are different profiles for different jobs. So if you're a Canine Companions dog, you really need a ton of self-control. It's not easy to be in this room, and I think Alex really did a nice job highlighting how Cypress and Locke and the other puppies or dogs have to have a lot of self-control in a group of people and puppies and strange, et cetera. But you also need to be really good at communicating, like I've already highlighted. But when it came to the bomb-detecting dogs, and these are dogs that we're working with the Marine Corps, self-control is a disaster. And a hilarious story. I have to tell you a funny story. I get an email, I'm a professor, I care about my students, you don't want anybody to get hurt. I get this email from my students. They're down in Pinehurst working with the dogs that are trained by the Marine Corps. And they say, we need helmets. What? We need helmets. Can we buy helmets on the grant? Is there a line item for helmets? I'm like, yeah, you can buy. I mean, what kind of helmets? Like bike helmets. Oh, okay. I was like, all right, like anything crazy. All right. So yeah, buy some bike helmets. Like, what do you need the bike helmets for? She's like, we'll send you the video. All right. So they're doing this test that's our main test of self-control. And the dog actually has to navigate around a barrier. But of course, Marine Corps dogs, what do? They go through the barrier. And there's a person, my student, sitting behind the barrier, and the barrier was falling on them. And they were terrified. They were going to get injured because the dogs would not go around. They could not go around. They were like, we go through walls. We don't go around walls. So anyway, self-control is not something you want, and it ends up that the most successful bomb-detecting dogs had zero self-control, and you or I would be in our right mind to say that is not the smartest dog if you saw it trying to solve different problems. But again, my goal in all of this work was not to bequeath a blue ribbon and say, oh, you're a smart dog. My job is, which of these kinds of measures is correlated with success at the job you have to grow up to do? Okay. All right, Johnny, next slide. All right, we can go to the next one. That's just some specifics of what I just told you. All right, next one. We're going to get, actually, you can skip a bunch because let's get where you go to where it's, you keep going, and I'll tell you. Keep going, keep going. All right, yeah, puppy kindergarten. All right, so the previous slide was just to remind me to say what I already did, which was we have found evidence that some of the games that are associated with success, and we do have games that we play like that food in the box game, is associated with success in training. There are other games too that I could tell you about, like the gesture game, etc. But we have found, we have 188 SNPs. These are single nucleotide polymorphisms that are associated with success. We know that they're expressed in neural tissue predominantly. And we have 5 genes that are candidate genes for some of the tests that are associated with success. Now, everything I've told you about so far, though, is in a dog that's Cypress's age, adult dogs. Our start was, could we look at individual differences and do what I just told you? And the answer is yes. Right now, we have statistical models we can use. We can take about an hour or an hour and a half with a dog. We can run them through our games, and we can run our stats model, and we can make a prediction about what's going to happen to that dog in its training. And we're about 90% now in being able to make a prediction, especially at the high end of the model, where dogs look like they're going to be really successful. Okay, but that's an adult dog that just went to college. That's like basically I'm an admissions officer. Like, that was not the goal. The goal was not, I told you the Holy Grail was not to be an admissions officer in college. The goal is to talk about younger dogs. So that's why we started the Duke Puppy Kindergarten, which from the outside looks like the silliest thing ever. And oh my gosh, Duke is just trying to be crazy and let their students who are already running around doing crazy things at Duke have puppies now. Because that's what we need on a college campus. All students need a puppy in their dorm room. But no, there's serious science behind what we're doing. Next slide, Johnny. And the question was, could we take the Duke Canine Cognition Center, put together Canine Companions, and then look at puppies and do even more? The hypothesis being that that cognition is important to training success, and it already emerges early in a puppy's life, and some of the early experiences they get are really important for their success. All right, next slide. So you can fill this one out for me, Johnny. Sorry. This is just saying we have nice facilities that Duke built that are wonderful for raising a puppy. All right, next slide. Duke has allowed the puppies to go anywhere they want on campus. So you can see, here's a puppy. Johnny, you can click it again for me. There's a puppy on Duke's campus. All right, next slide. We got yes to the Duke Gardens, puppies in the gardens. Next slide. They're in the chapel. We can take them to the chapel if we want. We can take them to the library. That was super funny. The librarians were stoked. And I was like, really? We can take our puppies to the library? They're like, yes. I'm like, all right, okay. And so we're raising Canine Companion dogs on campus. They arrive when they're around 8-9 weeks of age. We have students raising them. It's run like a kindergarten. We have some of the students that we know and have a good track record of raising puppies. They are basically the puppy parents. They have a team of about 4 to 6 students, and they are dedicated to raising that dog. But we also have a kindergarten so that from 9 to 5, there are other students who take care of the puppy when the puppy parents drop them off at the kindergarten. So they're in the kindergarten all day, and so then the group who's the puppy parents, they can go to class and from 9 to 5 go to their Duke job, and then they come pick up their dog at 5 and take them back to the dorm. And because they're in a team, they only have the puppies 2 nights a week, and they switch which night they have during the week. So we don't want to get in the way of their studies, obviously, but we also want them to have a good time and get to know their dog and the dog to have a good experience as well. Okay, so we do cognitive tests. Thank you, Johnny. You predicted. All right, next one. And we're looking at their temperament. Next one. And we're doing physiological measures as well of the puppies. Now, believe it or not, the last time somebody was crazy enough to do what we're doing was in the 60s. And what I'm trying to tell you is there has not been a study of puppy development by a group of scientists where you measure the same puppy multiple times as they grow up. It's called a longitudinal design. Usually you'd measure puppies one time and you measure a lot of puppies, but you measure each puppy once. And you just try to make inferences about what's going on. But we're using the same puppy, measuring it again and again and again, and it's a much more powerful design. Okay, next slide. Next slide. You can just skip all that. Top. All right, that's puppy. Oh, you guys want to see puppy videos of them solving problems? Okay, all right. I'm cognizant of the time, but okay, click that, Johnny. This is Sassy, who actually lived in my house during the pandemic. And she's going to see if she can use some human gestures here. Good job, Sassy. All right, so she understands. So one of the big findings is that at 8, 9 weeks old, young dog puppies already understand human gestures. They don't need to be trained. It's not a training thing. They really, on trial one, without any previous experience, they're very, very good at understanding us. It's a remarkable thing. We've compared young puppies to wolves. Wolves can't do it. So we think it's a product of domestication. Now, unfortunately, this video down below, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. It's just down here is where the action is going to take place. Johnny, you can run it. It's actually a study of self-control. So this first thing, the dog, that's Rainbow, who also was raised in my house. She just goes in the tube and gets the food out. But now we make it see-through. So it's like the bird going through the window. Ooh, that was a bad analogy, but you get what I'm saying. Boom. You see Rainbow didn't go around. She bumped into the clear thing. So you have to learn to have self-control and go around. And then there's another even meaner version where you put you seal the correct answer that was correct before, and now it's wrong. And so they have to learn that they have to inhibit what they had just learned was the correct answer. So after 1 or 2 trials, a chimpanzee or bonobo, this is very easy. An adult dog, maybe 4 or 5 trials. So what we're doing is we're studying how the puppies learn to cope with this kind of need for self-control, and then looking at the individual differences between them. Okay, next one. You can go to the next one for me. All right, next. Sorry, there's so many animations. Usually I have a clicker, so I'm doing it. Next one. You can go to the next one. Okay, so this is what sort of generally what we've seen is this is one of the gesture tasks. So I told you they're really good at it. This is like 80% correct. And if down here would be 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 14, 16, 18 weeks, and they get better is the punchline. But what's interesting is on some of the other measures, there seems to be an emergence moment where they really reach adult level in sort of a rapid moment. And the reason we chose 8 to 16, 18 weeks to look at the puppies is it's the last moment of rapid brain development in dogs. And so the hypothesis is, and this is about, we have a bunch of measures that look like this. It looks like around 13 weeks, 12, 13 weeks, something really special happens. Probably their synaptic pruning is starting, their synaptogenesis is slowing down, and their brains are pretty much finishing up. Their white tracks are probably done as well. So around 12, 13, 14 weeks is where now we know we should probably be looking at the individual variability that might help us make predictions. Do you follow what I'm saying? And before we had done this study, nobody knew that that's how it worked. Okay, next slide. Interesting, though. Everybody knows and has heard about nature versus nurture, which is the bane of my existence because it's always nature and nurture. Everything's nature and nurture. You can't have nature versus nurture. It's always the two interacting. The question is, what's the influence of the two in whatever you're looking at? And so lots of people would be surprised by this finding, including me. Because what I'm showing here is, and I'm sorry it's not brighter, but there's two lines. Hopefully you can see that. There's two colored lines. One's red, one's kind of blue-green. That's two groups of dogs. One group of dogs has been raised at Duke in our weird way, where they literally meet hundreds or thousands of people while they're at Duke. They go all over campus. They go to the hospital. They are absolutely super socialized. Canine Companion dogs are socialized very, very heavily, normally, in a human family, the people who have raised dogs here. But they're going to meet a few dozen people. They're going to go great places, but not all over a college campus and meet thousands of people. So we've done this crazy thing of super, super socializing them. And so far, we have found zero effect on their maturation. So all the worry about, are we doing it right? It's probably that there's a threshold of care and concern, and you get across that threshold, and it's probably not going to affect how their cognition matures too dramatically. I'm not trying to say that that's for all behavioral traits, but for cognition, I think that's probably what we're seeing pretty loud and clear. Okay, next slide, and then I'm almost done. All right, one more. Keep going, keep going. Keep going, Johnny. Thank you. This is just saying the kids raise them. Good, good, good. We've got lots of kids who do it. Hundreds of kids are involved. If you could roll this video, this is just one of the fun spin-offs of what we're doing. I almost finished, I promise. One of the socialization things we do is we take the puppies to the ICU, the pediatric ICU. They had a big problem, obviously, during the pandemic with nurses, quitting and being stressed out. And so we were requested to bring the puppies to the PQ. And they've collected data, and it's been one of their most effective programs for nurse retention. Is we go 2 to 3. so thank you. We go 2 to. We have each group of nurses sees the puppies sometimes biweekly, and it's helped them bond together as a team and given them stress release and that kind of stuff. So we're really excited about that. It's not anything we had any funding for. It just sort of, they found out we had puppies and they asked us, and how could we say no? And so we figured out how to do it. All right, so next slide is just thank you to y'all. This is when the puppies first come, how old they are, and then of course they graduate from Duke University. All right, next slide is another thank you, which you saw in the beginning, and then the final slide, let's see, this is everybody who helped us. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate, and we'll welcome your questions. And thank you, Johnny.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Dr. Hare. Q&A?
Have you genotyped
Yes, Bill.
successful dogs and found any markers of success?
So it's being done now. That's the short version. And we have optimism because we have done the same work, but with a different approach, with a much larger sample of dogs. And we do have SNPs and we have genes that are associated with cognitive abilities that are related to success. So we think it might work, but it's not done yet.
This is not about the program, but I'm very curious. I have noticed myself personally during the pandemic that dogs that I know, dogs that I do not know, do not seem to be thrown by masks at all. They don't seem to care. They're keying on the eyes, on the body gestures, and I'm just wondering, because you're dealing with animals that often are dealing with people who may have no control over their body actions. Just talk a little bit about how these animals seem to be taking the behavioral cues of these.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So how do dogs perceive, I don't want to take your mic, Forrest. I mean, you're so good with it. Yeah, but I mean,
I'll just hold it for you.
it's natural for you though. Like you're a natural man. So how do dogs perceive faces? And how do they use faces in their interaction with humans? So the short version is they are sensitive to facial expressions, but I would say that they do not prioritize them in their decisions and interactions with us. So I do think they're sensitive to them, but if they have other information, they prioritize that information, which is what you were highlighting, where the direction you're looking, your use of gestures, the tone of your voice, the words you're using. So facial expressions are really down a long list. So a mask isn't really going to be the end of the world, I don't think.
And just follow on quickly, does olfaction figure in there? Do we know?
In terms of their understanding of us?
What we may be radiating, if we are fearful, if we are whatever. I just don't know what the standard science is.
Right. So one of my jokes that I like that when people, because one of the arguments that, or theoretical perspectives that cognition brings is that you can't just have one measure of intelligence. There's no unidimensional measure. We've all been given numbers in our lives that, we're on some scale and we can be tested and rated or whatever. It's not that easy. And so my joke is always, and since we have cetacean people in the room, I always say, well, how'd you do on the echolocation test, right? And there's forms of intelligence that other organisms have that humans are not capable of. And that brings us back to olfaction. So it's often in the media that humans have, the dogs have this amazing olfactory system and humans, are sort of pathetic. It's more complicated than that, actually. So humans actually can discriminate lots of olfactory information in a quite sensitive way, it ends up. It's that we don't prioritize that information. And it ends up that dogs often prioritize that information in a way that we don't. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, go to the COVID, back to the pandemic. I was telling new friends tonight that I was surprised that dogs could detect COVID in people. And if anybody who read any of those papers, the way the technique works is they would take sweat samples from people who were infected and sweat samples from folks who weren't, and the dogs could discriminate. So what that means is there's volatile organic compounds that are being exuded by our bodies specific to COVID, because the control was that people had the flu and they could discriminate between somebody with the flu or somebody with COVID. Now that is crazy to me. I would have believed that the body was expressing volatile organic compounds, VOCs, when you have a viral infection, but not specific to the virus. And it ends up that it does seem to be that at least dogs can pick up something specific to COVID, which is remarkable to me. So, we don't know, because it's a world that we don't experience. It's like echolocation in dolphins.
Question for me. So does COVID have a sense of smell, or what would the kind of olfactory sense be that the dogs are detecting that we do not have the systems to compute yet?
Yeah, the way that it works is that your body is basically, as your immune system is fighting, right? Your body, you have a metabolism, you're using energy, and there's proteins that you're breaking down to, process and let your immune system fight. And so then there's waste that's excreted via your sweat.
Gotcha.
And apparently there are proteins that are specific to your immune system fighting COVID, because dogs can discriminate between a viral infection with, say, the flu or COVID.
So our body's kind of waving like a red flag?
Yeah.
That the dog can see?
Yeah, basically.
Wish I could see that flag. Interesting. So you had a question?
Is there a way that an organization could use your data, your results at this point?
So how can they use them? Yes, I don't think we're that far off. In terms of the adult dogs, we could already do that. The question is, how useful is that? Is that really going to be the most cost-effective application of that finding?
So we have dogs that tracker dogs, bomb sniffing. We've had situations where we've invested.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Right.
Is there a way to access your research so that we can do a better job?
I see. Yes and no, but we could talk about it. I'd be interested. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a difference
In terms of success for Canine Companions, now that I would not be, no difference. Yeah, I know with cognition we don't see sex differences of any particular size. Yeah.
So a dog is a dog.
Yeah, for dogs it's basically the same. Yeah. With chimpanzees we see some differences. Oh, okay. So what significance does a lab's pedigree have on your work? So that was sort of the story I was telling you, that we had pet dogs that are sort of a crazy mix of pet dogs in the Triangle area in North Carolina compared to dogs that have been bred for hunting and detection work. They were all Labrador Retrievers with a really beautiful pedigree that AKC would have celebrated. And then we have dogs from Canine Companions with a very well controlled and carefully selected pedigree for the purpose of service. And so those two populations of Labrador Retrievers are extremely different psychologically from each other and from pet dogs. So it matters a lot, and I think the selection that occurred happened very fast. So the short version is I think it matters a lot, yeah. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.